Right. I mean, in the Baha'i faith, it describes marriage as a fortress for well-being. So I've thought about that phrase. What's a fortress? A fortress is like a safe area where there's like war happening around. So you need that marriage to function. It's an institution, and it's an institution where when you're inside of it, there's security, there's love. You know, it's a fortress against all the negatives you might face when you go out in the real world. And I think that's beautiful. Now, if that fortress inside of it, there's abuse, there's neglect, you know, there's dominance, that's not really a fortress for all the members. So the individual members of that family, all the individual's rights have to be upheld. But everyone has duties too, to each other and to the family. So I think that always shaped my idea of family and marriage, while being able to achieve my own personal goals, but then also contribute to the building of a family.
So you described it as a fortress.
Fortress for well-being.
Fortress for well-being.
Yeah.
And something that really stood out to me that you said is the fortress can't just protect one or two people in the fortress. If your family's in the fortress, then that means everybody's has to be respected in the same way and has to be viewed with a certain regard to where they feel safe in that fortress, because like you said, there's war and everything else and chaos going on outside of it. And that to me is, and you tell me, I don't have any kids, but as a parent, or hopefully as a future parent, that's what scares me the most, is the fact that once my kids leave the house, there's all that chaos of society. You know, I can teach them one thing in the household, but then if they go to school or if they're on a sports team and they're looking at all their friends' TikToks and and all these other things that are here that weren't here, you know, when we were growing up, that to me, I'm scared of.
Yeah.
Because, so I guess my question to you would be, how do you make sure, or how do you do your best job to instill certain values in your kids to where even when they leave the fortress, they're still protected in sort of, I don't know, like a bubble around them to where they can bounce off the negative and still absorb the positive?
That is definitely a huge challenge I think we all face. So I think when your children are young, their education is extremely important. And when I say education, I don't just mean math and science. But when your children are young, under the age of like 10, 12 especially, the primary goal of that family, right, needs to be the education of their children, both materially, psychologically, spiritually. That spiritual education is huge. And that's where the family unit, again, helps nurture that. I'm not saying families who are maybe divorced or not don't have that, but ideally that family unit will best provide that atmosphere for the children, because who are the primary educators of the children? Number one is the mother. And so when we talk about roles and equality and sameness, this is also what I'm talking about. In general, the mothers are the ones that carry the baby, and they're the ones that might nurse the infant, right? And nurture the baby at the beginning of life. And that primary educator of that child or that future generation is the mother. So she needs to be educated. And then the father's role, one of his main roles, is to help provide for that education by supporting the mother in providing that education. You know, so they're not exactly the same roles. Now, you can have a family where it's opposite, where the father might be more the primary nurturer, and that's fine. We have to allow for that flexibility again. I'm speaking in general terms, but for each individual people, they might have, for their family, something might work differently. And that's okay too. So that education of children, materially, emotionally, physically, you know, you got to make sure your kids are flossing and they don't get cavities and they're eating healthy. I got to make sure that their mental health is okay. I got to make sure they're educated in terms of sciences and arts. But you have to also make sure that they're getting spiritually educated. And what I mean by that is for the kid to understand that they're noble. That sense of inner nobility is a spiritual thing. Why are we all individually noble? Because God made us that way. He gave us all these capacities and abilities to be God-like.